Okay.
Yeah, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were saying something about women and leadership and today. What was the question?
About the leadership. I was saying at this particular, if you look at African countries, we are struggling with electing female leaders, which I think if it was before colonization, it wouldn't be a big deal. So all this toxic masculinity has been brought by the white man.
Oh yeah. Um, and the thing is, my thinking about that is also slightly different. In
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like for me that is expected, right, within the framework that we are using, because what we call leadership today and what we call politics and those kind of things today are what came with colonization, right? So the framework we use to do our politics, to do our economics, to basically to live our lives as Africans today is it's not our template. We are following somebody else's framework, right? Because you can see that at least in the Igbo societies, the society or the people themselves back then had decided on a system that would work for them, and that was to separate powers between um, men or societal affairs and women's affairs or something like that, that worked harmoniously for the society to move in the direction that they wanted it to move, right? But what we have today, um, where the politics is, we adopted either Eastern or Western politics, Eastern or Western economics, is, and I understand that even within this framework, women and men should share power equally, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'm just saying that I think it is expected that we will have continue to have this contestation between men and women. Because first of all, we are working within a framework that is not ours to start off with, right? I mean, what colonization does here is a clear, is a clear evidence of divide and conquer. You know what? Usually, when we talk about divide and conquer, people think about the colonizers arriving and dividing like tribes, people along tribal lines, right? Africans along tribal lines and things like that. But we forget that, or we are not really aware that another aspect of divide and conquer that they introduced, and that is, for me, the most effective, was to divide the African man and the African woman, and to introduce a sort of, I can't even say contestation or competition between them, because there's no competition. The African woman is relegated to oblivion, you know,
Yeah.
and
But
and that
really,
that was
that being
effective.
said, that being
Mhm,
said, in our society, we still have clans, and they're still,
yes.
and then there are the clan leaders and people of the
Mhm,
clan. So I have
mhm,
noticed that in our clan, the leader is always the man, but the women are there. They take roles like the secretary,
mhm,
the treasurer, because you would trust a woman with your money and how to
mhm,
plan them. Like if you send a woman to the market, they will
mhm,
use that money to the best of their knowledge. If I sent you
mhm.
to the supermarket to go get two things, you will overspend. So
Is that so?
that is so
Yeah.
true. But in our
Mm,
society, I've noticed, though we are like, as a woman who's from that area, Kadim,
mhm.
I am not, I am part of the clan, but I don't have a say. You
Yeah.
understand? But my
Yes, I
mother
do.
is part of the clan through marriage, and she has a say. She has a
Yeah.
position in the clan. Then there are the male issues and the female issues. In
Mhm,
case there is a funeral and they're planning a funeral, they will let the women plan for things like food, how people will eat, the guests, and all that. Then the men will deal with the bigger issues, like who will dig the grave and all that. So it's something that's still happening to date,
mhm,
but not
mhm.
on a larger scale.
Yeah, exactly. Because these institutions that we used to have, or Africans used to have been rendered to be,
Yeah,
you know, to be
yeah,
impotent. You know, it's like I
mm,
said, they are remnants of what used to happen. And my fear is that they probably also now mimic the colonial logic. You know what I mean? The understanding,
yes, yes,
the understanding that African men have of how women are supposed to participate in activities. I think today it mimics colonial logic. You know, it does not follow what
yeah,
used to happen before colonization. So that's why you said you will find that women have minimal roles. I think
yeah,
it's because that's what men think today. They think that should be the role of women, right? But
yes.
that
Kitchen.
that the template of that is definitely colonization.
Mm,
And the
true.
British did this, or the colonialists did this so that they could rule us. You know, we don't realize that it was so that they could win our lands and be able
Mm-hmm,
to rule over us. Because if we are divided like that, and if women are rendered impotent, and men become stooges and puppets of colonizers themselves, then that's it. They are done with us, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And I was talking about how they were able to successfully take agriculture away from women. And
Mm,
I don't know if I mentioned that the markets themselves, they took them away from women, right? So the
mm,
trading market, we see like after colonization, men start to, gain control in areas that traditionally belonged to women, even like the trading markets. They removed women from there. Um,
mm,
and remember, also colonization came with its own innovations, right? I mean, this was during the industrial era. So Britain and other colonial powers, they are, you know, reimagining the world in their own image in some way. So the innovations that they bring here in Africa are meant to mimic European societies, right? Even the kind of
mm,
education that they bring, for example, is the industrial era education.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting
Yeah.
feedback from you. Oh, okay. Okay, yes, it's gone. Yes, and yeah, I was just talking about education, for example. So they introduce education, but you know what happens? Women are excluded from that education. They start to build schools. And the law is that women cannot go to school, right? But you will
Yeah.
see that women did not just sit passively and watch these developments take place. They actually resisted. There are many throughout history, you'll read about many boycotts and many strikes and many different kinds of protests that women carried out during this period, to try and resist this ostracization or marginalization of women in society, right? And sometimes they win certain battles, they win some minor victories. For example, being allowed in school. Later, women are allowed to go to school, but you know what happens?
Mm-hmm.
They are told they can only study subjects that are considered the home sciences.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know what that means. In
I
fact, this
do.
is not.
I wanted to ask you, did you don't have home science in your curriculum in South Africa?
No, I never saw it in school myself, but I think
Oh,
my sisters and my
we
brothers
still
who went to, yeah, I
we
think
still
when
have
I
home
went,
science to do.
you still have home sciences. Yeah, when
Yes,
I went,
and it's an elective subject, but
okay.
it's mostly chosen by the female students. But it's still offered in our curriculum to date.
Can you explain what is home sciences for those that might not know what it referred to?
Home science is anything that deals with the home, cooking, cleaning, needlework,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
making of the dresses and all that.
Yeah.
Anything that, yeah, that is homely.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was introduced by colonization when women were allowed for the first time to go to school like men, and they said, okay, yeah,
Mm.
you can come to school, but you can't study this or that. You can't study certain subjects that are
Mm-hmm.
relevant for the industrial era. Then you can do You can do things that are for women, like knitting and cooking. Yeah. In fact, this is where now, for real now, the place of the woman becomes the kitchen for the first time. The place of the woman is now the kitchen. That's introduced through education. Another aspect of life where women used to have power, remember, was religion, right? Women used to be spiritual leaders. Remember, we talked about women being healers and being the medics in their communities, being the oracles. But now with colonization comes Christianity, right? And Africans are told they must become Christians. What happens? That area that used to be controlled by women, again, what happens to it is rendered useless. Because now the priest is a man, the deacon, people that run the churches are men. Women are meant to just go to church and
Help
shut
out.
up and listen to men talk.
And when they introduced nuns were just supposed to help out in the church, to just sit and be seen and sing sometimes. And then they were doing
the role of the women is to sing.
And if you look at how even the nuns in Kenya, they live in convents, so they have big farms of which they have to farm on their own and produce foods. But then what do they do with the food? They ensure that the priests are well fed.
These are things, developments that came with colonization, of course. And you will find that then when this happens now, women have to, they have to survive, right? So they start having their own like informal industries that they participate in, right? So they start to have they continue to try to farm, but it's now on a very small scale. They try to have their own markets, but it's lethargic because they are not allowed. The system has excluded them. And what you'll find even more painful is that even in those areas where they start to establish their own informal sectors, when the government finds out about it, they tax them. There were taxes that were introduced specifically for women.
Like what?
Like there would be like a woman tax on something. Like it would be specific, it would be expressive like that, clear. That women that can say maybe if they farm certain crops, they have to pay a tax to government for those crops, things like that. But as I said, women obviously resisted, and they once in a while the colonial government would relent and appoint a woman to some position, right? But it's like there was like this only woman phenomenon where that woman would be the only woman appointed,
and they have to be a puppet as well.
Yeah, exactly. They had to be puppets.
Drive the
They would
agenda.
obviously choose the woman who's collaborating, who's listening, not the women who, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was another woman, actually, her name is Ahebi Ugbabe, who in the whole of Nigeria in 1918 became a warrant chief. She was the only woman warrant chief in Nigeria in 1918. And it is believed she was appointed to that position because she had helped the British army, right, to conquer a certain area in Nigeria and defeat the people of that area. She did that by giving the British very vital information about that community so that they could defeat them. And after they defeated them, then they appointed her to become a warrant chief, So yeah, you're right. Some of these women had to collaborate with but you can't blame them. They had seen the men themselves become collaborators. Those men that were appointed to leadership positions had themselves become collaborators with, or they collaborated with.
I think at this particular point in time, we cannot blame anyone because you had to survive.
You had to survive, exactly. You had to survive. The society was disfigured. You know,
Mm,
it was no longer the society they used to know.
yeah.
That's it from me for today.
So I wanted to add to something that I've noticed.
Hmm.
This how if I looking at my mother calls herself by her surname, her dad's name. Same to her
Hmm.
mother, women in their generation. But in our current generation, people are taking their husbands' names.
Oh,
I
wait,
think
are
this
you
was also
saying that your mom uses her maiden surname? Um,
yes, she does.
he does not use
Because
your father's surname.
in our society, when you
Hmm.
get married
Hmm.
to someone, you're not
Hmm.
associated with that person. That person is not ruling over you. So you're not their property. You are your father's
Yes,
property. You keep
yes.
your father's name and people call you by your father's name. Like, my father's name is Omolo. Wherever
Hmm.
I'll get married, they will call me Nyaromolo forever. They will not call
Oh, okay.
me someone's wife. That is
Yeah.
something that also came with colonization. And if you think about it, it puts down the women. It shows that the women's position in the society is a bit lower than the men.
Yes. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they did. I mean, because the woman has to take the man's surname, which is a nonsense. I think they did that trying to relegate women even further down, right? But they didn't
Yes,
realize that
yes.
in doing that, they're still insulting even men. Because
Yeah.
if my daughter gets married now, why must she change my name and adopt the name of another man who is the father of her husband? It's nonsense, right? But
And at this in Kenya, a lot of women are refusing to take their husbands' names. Not
yeah,
even hyphenating, just maintaining their names as they are.
yeah, and personally, I don't blame them because, in fact, the surnaming came with colonization. When you look at it, I mean, I'm speaking under correction, but in my culture, I know that there were no surnames before colonization. People did, in fact, Africans did not have surnames before colonization.
They just
Um,
had their names,
they just had their
and then
names.
you'd be
Yeah,
called, and then you'll be called daughter of. Because if I said my name is Auma, who knows Auma? But if I said
exactly,
I'm daughter of Omolo, they'll ask Omolo from where? I'll say Omolo, son of Jacobo, and then people will
exactly.
know who you are.
Exactly. The Arabs still practice that with so and so bin so and so bin so and so bin so and so, or ibn so and so being um, the son of or the daughter of. Yeah, Africans
Oh,
used
that's
the same
nice.
system, I think, because I mean,
Yeah,
for
we did.
example, my father and his brothers, even today, my father and two of his brothers don't use the same surname. My father is
Oh, really?
Mariri. My uncle is Habe, and that's his
Why?
surname. And my other uncle, because one of my uncles, okay, so this is what's going on. They
Mm-hmm.
believe that because they know who's the father of the original Mariri, right? So my uncle
Mm-hmm.
said he will use the father of the original Mariri, which is the great great grandfather. So one of my uncle uses that that name
That
as his
name.
name, and then my other
Mm.
uncle uses the name of the entire clan as as his surname. But I mean, this just goes to show that surnames were not there before colonization. So surnaming was introduced for population control. I think it was a control mechanism by colonizers to be able to it was a kind of, I don't know, maybe a kind of a census or something like that that they did. It worked
Yeah, yeah.
for the colonial system. They knew through naming us how they would control us. But then now they added a slight twist where now when you get married as a woman, now you must abandon your father's surname or father's name and adopt the name of your father's husband and make it your surname and all that
But
nonsense
if you
too.
if if you read some literature, you'll realize the white men used to take wives as their property, but the Africans used to take wives as part of the family. You join a family. you're not the property of that family. That's why
Yeah.
when you get married into a family, you can make decisions about the family.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, most of it was arranged marriage, isn't it? So it's because the families, you were married into that family because they wanted you. They knew before you were born that you were going to be a part of this family,
Yeah.
Yeah, because before you were born, it was known that when you are born, you are going to marry their son, because
Yeah.
the marriage.
Mm.
Yeah, but I think we've been talking for too long now. I think we could stop here.
Yeah, we could stop here. Next week, it will be Professor S's turn. And
Well,
this time around, we'll all be in the dark with the audience on what we'll be talking about next week. It
yeah,
will be a secret forever because he's
because
not here to tell us.
that's right. He's not here to tell us. All right, John. All right, Cooper.
Let's
See
sail.
you then. See you next week then.
We thank you for bearing with us for another episode of African History Around the Campfire. We look forward to you coming back to see us next week at the same black time on the same African channel. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe and select to be notified. But above that, hit the share button because we all know someone who needs this. See you next week, inshallah.